Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we're taking a look at Leonard Williams, obviously defensive end for the New York Giants, and whether or not they might let him walk in free agency and why that might happen. Of course, there's tons of different reports coming out right now indicating that he might be overpaid. We've heard $25 million, we've heard 23, 21.5, somewhere in that range. And there has to be a point where the Giants kind of say, this is too much money for us to spend on Leonard Williams. You know, he did have a great season last year, but paying him Aaron Donald money, paying him Chris Jones money might not be the best idea. It might put them in a situation where they don't have money to spend elsewhere, too much invested in the interior defensive line. They could take that money and sign a number one wide receiver and then a pass rusher. They could do a bunch of different things. So that's kind of the argument and debate we want to have today. But Anthony, my friend, before we dive into Leonard Williams and his contract negotiations, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing real good. I'm very excited because it's here. You know, free agency is finally here. We've been talking about it for months. We've been, making tons of videos about it, discussing it, speculating about it. And that speculation is finally going to come to an end because it's real. It's here now, right? You know, free agency, the new league year's on Wednesday. The legal tampering period opens up today. You know, it's finally here. It's a very exciting time. You know, the offseason is really about to get into full swing. From now to the draft, it's going to be pretty much nonstop with signings and trades, and it's going to be really interesting because teams are back in business and doing work, and they're doing difficult work right now with the salary cap situation just across the league. You know, the salary cap shrinking has had really, really tough impact on pretty much every team. The Giants are one of the teams affected the most by it, though. They're very tight on cap space, and one of the reasons they're so tight on cap space is this Leonard Williams contract negotiation, right? Because they placed a franchise tag on him. That franchise tag is worth at least $19 million. If the grievances gets passed, it might be worth $21, I believe. And Leonard Williams is looking to get at least $21 million per year in this next contract. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how things shape out. And if the Giants don't get a deal done by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the absolute latest, they might be in a really, really terrible situation where they just can't take advantage of all the great players on the free agent market. And, it might get really, really tricky for the Giants, and they might actually have to end up letting him just hit the open market on his own and rescind the franchise tag just so that they have more money and more flexibility with their salary cap space. It's going to be really interesting. The Giants are in a really difficult situation with this Leonard Williams negotiation.
Yeah, and here's kind of an overview of what their cap looks like right now. They've already incorporated the Leonard Williams 19.3 franchise tag number into the cap. So right now they have about $2.5 million in available space after cutting Kevin Zeitler, and cutting a couple other guys, Golden Tate and David Mayo. Now you have Nate Solder, who reportedly is taking a steep discount this upcoming season, which, I talked about this a little bit. The move for Nate Solder was a very good one. Aside from the contract in the first place, everything that, they had to deal with, what they did this offseason with Nate Solder's contract is going to be very good for them because outright, if you cut him, you save only about $6 million, right? You only save $6 million. If you lower his cap hit, ask him to restructure, lower his cap hit to $10 million from 16.5, not only do you save $6.5 million, but you get to keep the player too. So you get 2 for 1 in that context. You do get to keep Nate Solder as your swing tackle, maybe your starting right tackle if you might compete with Matt Parrott there. So we'll see how that works out. But you get the money to spend as well. So the Giants, after that deal is restructured, I think that they'll probably have the details worked out. Probably by the 17th, legal tampering starts tomorrow, so they can start to talk with players. And as long as they're underneath the cap, they have the money to sign them. It shouldn't be a problem. So I think they have a couple more days to iron out the official details for Nate Solder's contract. But right now they only have about $2.5 million. And $19.3 million, the cap hit is too high for Leonard Williams. They're going to have to bring that down, whether or not it is through a long-term extension or releasing him or letting him walk in free agency. So with tampering starting, like Anthony mentioned, there's a lot of really great players in the market. The Giants simply can't wait too long, otherwise they're all going to get scooped up. There's so many players that are going to have to settle for one-year deals. The only thing that I will say is that the Giants have a slight advantage because teams, I think, are going to take a little bit longer to figure out their cap space. So free agency might move a little bit slower than you'd usually see, which will give the Giants just maybe a day or two extra to make their moves. But they want to go in with money. They want to go in knowing that they can sign players immediately because guys like Kenny Golladay, they're going to set the market. They're going to probably go relatively early, set the market for everybody else. So the Giants really need to be careful with how they maneuver right now. Now, Anthony, my question for you is, What do you think the max amount the Giants should pay Leonard Williams is? Because I'm kind of in the $19 to $20 million boat. If they go above that, they're taking a huge risk on a player who only has had one really great season. He only has one great season to his name, one Pro Bowl. So I'm kind of sitting here like, what do you do in this scenario? Double-digit sack last year. His best season, obviously, but it's only one. It's only one season. How can you commit Aaron Donald money? How can you commit Chris Jones money to a guy that really hasn't proven it year in and year out over the last 5-6 seasons? That's my concern, and he's probably asking for a 4-year deal. The Giants like those 3-year deals right now. If he's going 21 plus, I don't think I'm buying. I think I might walk and just sign somebody else to replace. And with that money, you could get a solid pass rusher and a stopgap defensive tackle. Just to fill the gaps. There's a lot of players available this free agency period.
Yeah, there are a lot of players available. One thing that you will say, or one argument that I'll make for signing Leonard Williams, right? He is a perfect schematic fit for the Giants. Him and Patrick Graham worked wonders together. And you like to believe when you have a player enter a new scheme and have a breakout season in that scheme that he's only going to get better in his second year in that scheme, right? So that's kind of what you would like to believe about Leonard Williams, that this wasn't a fluke, that really what he needed was just to be paired with Patrick Graham. And next year, another year with Patrick Graham, he'll be even better and would hopefully live up to a very large contract. But I do agree that price tag is getting really, really steep. When you're talking about paying him, there's a report, I think it was Dan Dugan said, or Dan Duggan, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I think that he said that Leonard's looking to get closer to $25 million per year than he is to $20 million per year. So he's trying to get to that $23 million range. Aaron Donald's average salary is $22.5. So you're talking about paying Leonard Williams more than you're paying Aaron Donald, right? And is that a smart thing to do? Are they even in the same stratosphere as players? You can really have a debate that they're not even close, that the talent gap is way too wide for a guy like Aaron Donald. And you can even say that the talent gap between Chris Jones and Leonard Williams is way too wide for them to be being paid the same amount, right? Leonard is, on this franchise tag getting $19.3 million. Chris Jones is getting an even $20 million per year on average, right? So when you're talking about paying Leonard Williams close to $25 million per year, you're really not talking about being smart with your money. Bottom line, I would love to have Leonard Williams back. He's one of my favorite players on the Giants. I think that he's a phenomenal talent. I think he provides a lot for this defense, right? I think he does a lot as a run defender, as an interior pass rusher, and I think that he does a lot off of the edge that people don't talk about enough. He really does line up in that 5-tech position, gets sacks over there. He lines up all over the defensive line. I've seen him at the over the guard, over the center. I've seen him over the tackle, he lines up all over the place and he makes plays. We've even seen him stand up as an edge rusher, an off-ball or an outside linebacker, right? We've seen him do that as well. So he's very versatile. He fits perfectly into the scheme, and I really want to see him come back. But that price tag is just probably a little too steep for me at this point. I don't know if I can realistically justify paying Leonard Williams, who has one career year of 10 or more sacks, $23 million per year. That is just so much money for a player, and when you want to get into the analytics of it, right, when you want to talk about interior defensive linemen and their wins above replacement, the best interior defensive lineman in the league, if you're not Chris Jones or Aaron Donald, your wins above replacement, that's an analytical stat, meaning you provide more to your team than a replacement would, right? Their wins above replacement are not that high, meaning that their position is not that valuable to a team's win rate, to a team's success on the field. They provide, certain things, but they're not necessarily translating to wins when you're paying big for a defensive lineman. So when you get into the analytics of it, it's going to tell you don't do this. This is a bad idea. But I think the Giants ultimately are going to sign Leonard Williams. I just am very fearful as to what the average salary is going to be and how they structure that contract to make it seem more affordable than it really is, because that's a lot of money to be given to an interior defensive lineman, and I am very scared about the idea of giving him that much money.
Yeah, so what I'm kind of looking at right now is the other options on the market, and it kind of led me to an interesting conclusion. If you look at the defensive tackles available, you have Kawan Short, Jarrell Casey, Ndamukong Suh, Daquan Jones, Quinton Jefferson, Malcolm Brown, Jonathan Hankins, Corey Peters. They're all big run-stuffing guys for the most part. Sue is the only guy who had more than 5 sacks out of all the names I listed, And with that being said, I'm a little worried that replacing him is too difficult, because Leonard Williams, what I'm starting to see from the Giants' perspective is that he is a very unique player. You don't get interior defenders that put up double-digit sacks very often. That's a rarity. You pay guys like that because you can't replace that production from an interior standpoint. That's kind of where I'm going with this, and he fits our scheme perfectly. They're not going to find another player who stops the run, who's as athletic, who doesn't miss any games because of injury, who rushes the passer, who was top 3 in pressures this year among interior defensive linemen, soaks up double teams. You're not going to find a guy that's adequate in all of those categories. You're just not going to, especially at that price tag. Well, at his price tag, maybe. But there's nobody available that's even worth that much money on the market. So, what I'm trying to say is they might not have a choice but to pay him because, 1, there's nobody to replace him with. 2, there's nobody who's going to put double-digit sacks from his position. And 3, he already has a year in the Giants scheme, so they're probably imagining he'll compound off of that. That's the problem. I'm scared that they can't replace him, Anthony. What do you think about those things I just said?
I think you make a lot of good points, similar points that I made. I think, going into year 2 of a scheme is a huge part of this, right? He's going to enter his second season with Patrick Graham. You would only assume that he gets better from there, right? One thing that I want to bring up, though, is when you look at you can go 2 routes here, right? There's no way if the Giants pay Leonard Williams $23 million a year that they're going to be able to re-sign Dalvin Tomlinson as well, right? That's just, I can't imagine that. That just doesn't sound realistic. When you're putting so much money into your 3-tech, I really doubt you can find that much money to put into your 0-tech, right? So Dalvin Tomlinson's projected contract is 4 years, $13.13 million on average annually, right? So $13 million average. Leonard Williams' projected contract is 4 years, $20 million average annually. So you're talking about a $7 million difference between these 2 players. Now I'm going to ask you, Alex, do you think it's more beneficial for the Giants to let Leonard Williams walk, not pay this guy $20 million, and then just sign Dalvin Tomlinson instead to be that 0-tech who's very consistent and good against the run at $13 million a year? Like, which one do you think is more important? Obviously the pass rusher, Leonard Williams, is more important, right? But at that price tag, compared to Dalvin Tomlinson's price tag, which one would you rather have? Because if you do sign Dalvin to the cheaper contract than Leonard's, you can take that money that you save and reallocate it elsewhere.
Well, it's so hard because the Giants play a 3-4 base, and they need a guy like Leonard Williams who's 6'5", 305 pounds to fill those gaps and rush the passer. I'm looking at a bunch of different options, including Carl Lawson, Justin Houston, a couple guys that could be stopgaps. Or Carl Lawson's really a long-term defensive end, but he's only 6'2", 265. Justin Houston, he's 6'3", 270, a little bit closer, but not really there. If you sign Dalvin Tomlinson, you're signing away double-digit sacks. The Giants had 40 sacks last year, and Leonard Williams had over 25% of them. That's the reality that we're facing right now. He had a lot of production in the Giants scheme, and if you take Leonard Williams out of the equation, the Giants have one of the worst pass rushes in the league. They were about average last year without any outside linebackers. That's how valuable he is. If you get Lorenzo Carter back, if you get Ocean Eximitas back, if you can sign a decent pass rusher like Hassan Reddick, a guy we mentioned yesterday in our free agent pass rush video, we're talking about a pass rush that could be super underrated, and that only helps the secondary. And then maybe you draft a corner or you find a veteran on a cheap deal to compete at CB2. There's things that you can do there. But I'm starting to realize that Leonard Williams might not be expendable, which is why he has so much leverage. Now, I do still believe that there's a price point where you just simply can't go over that because no other team's going to pay him that much. No team's going to give him $25 million per year. There's, especially with the cap down this season, there's no way. 22, I think that's probably where he'll end up landing with the Giants, $22 million per year. It'll backload majority to next season, which is going to hurt their ability to spend. But I imagine what they're kind of looking at right now is saying, okay, this upcoming draft class is going to be super impactful. Last year is going to be super impactful because now we have our defense pretty much set. Now it's just our offense. Now we can plug the pieces in. We can use the draft for our offense, and then we can build it that way. We've already built our defense up. We have them on a couple guys on long-term deals. We build our offense up this offseason and next offseason, then we're good to go in 2022. But that's kind of how I see it. I think Leonard Williams is part of their big-term plan, their long-term plan, and Dave Gettleman letting him go would be such a slap in the face. That would just be like, he's his golden goose. He gave up a 3rd and a 5th round pick for him. Letting him walk right now and, not just signing to a free agent deal after last offseason, it would really be a slap in the face to us just because, we gave up draft capital for what? 2 losing seasons. We should never give up draft capital when you're losing. You build through the draft, not free agency. That's kind of how I feel. But at the same time, Leonard Williams has been massively productive. I think they're going to retain him. I think that they're going to keep him about 4 years, $22 million average, which is okay because when the cap continues to go up after over the next 4 years, it'll look like a bargain 3 years from now. You know what I mean? It's like a quarterback signing a big deal now, and it's like a 10-year deal, and 9 years later, you're like, okay, now quarterbacks are being paid $50 million per season, but he was only making $30 million per season. So I think in 3 years, it'll look like a good deal as long as the production stays high. That's my biggest concern, Anthony. Do you think that his production is going to stay at the level of double-digit sacks, 62 pressures, setting records, lowest missed tackle rate, the combined tackles 57, 14 tackles for a loss, another career high. Do you think he's going to stay at that level, or do you think he's going to dip next season?
I think it's a coin toss. I think that he will be productive. I think he gets probably 6-7 sacks. The 11.5 was really surprising, and a couple of the, a big part of that was he had a 3-sack game, right? Like he had a couple of really big games down the stretch, which is what you want. That's why he gets 11.5 sacks. That's why we're talking about paying him money, because he showed up in the clutch and he had a couple really huge performances. I do think that his production will remain mostly the same. I don't think it'll take that huge of a drop off. Because when you look at 2019, he had 1 sack, right? But he had 48 pressures. And then he had 62 pressures and 13 sacks. So he was finishing plays. So that might have been just part of the scheme. The Giants' scheme was allowing him to finish plays at a higher rate rather than he was doing in the Jets scheme and then James Betcher's scheme. And you know what? The more that we talk about this, we sit here and we discuss this, the more that I really come to the conclusion, the Giants, while they might not be able to afford to keep him, I don't think they can afford to lose him either. This defense really, really needs Leonard Williams. With the versatility that he provides, with what he does in Patrick Green's scheme, being a perfect scheme fit, I hate to be the negative Nelly, but it just is a reflection of how terrible of a situation we are in with Leonard Williams, right? Like, we should have had this contract done last year, and we didn't, so now we're kind of screwed, right? We shouldn't have ever even traded for him, but we did, so now we're kind of screwed, but at least we have this really talented player on our roster. And you know what? One thing about the Giants, they need to start retaining the players that they have on their roster. Like the talented players that they have to stop just letting them go. They got to start retaining these guys. You could think back to multiple players throughout the years that they just let walk and they don't really get anything in return. It's either you got to start extending these guys or you got to start trading them before, they just walk for nothing. So I think, you know what, the way that I'm leaning, it's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm not going to be super happy about it. But the Giants don't have any long-term contracts signed anyway, really. I think 1 year deal, one more year after this season. You got 1 more year on Blake Martinez and James Bradbury, and then
they're not even long-term deals.
I don't think that there's no long-term deals.
I don't consider
anywhere,
3-year deals long-term, personally.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying they're not long-term deals. They're expiring next season. They're expiring. Daniel Jones is going to get a long-term deal if he plays well this year, probably. Saquon Barkley might get one.
He still has another 3 years, though. He still has his fifth year.
Jabril Peppers gets one, but really just you look at this team, it's very young. There aren't many long-term deals. Logan Ryan is like the only one that I can actually think of right now. And Graham Gano, right? Like these are the only long-term deals on the Giants roster right now.
3 years are good.
Deals.
3 years are good for the player too. They're good for the player too because if you look at Jabril Peppers, for example, you say, Jabril, we're going to give you a 5-year deal, and you're really banking on yourself with doing the 3-year, but the benefit is after 3 years, you're still in your prime, and you can roll that over into another big deal at market value. If you're signing a 5-year deal now, 4 years from now, you're playing under market value. That's
right.
the
But that's the incentive for teams to get players to sign 5-year deals, which is why, like when we do sign Jabril Peppers, I'm hoping it's a 5-year deal. Like it makes it harder to get out of the contract. Because it's a longer contract, it's a long-term deal, so it's harder to get
terrified.
out of it.
I'm terrified of 5-year deals now after the Jerry Reese era. Terrified.
I get that, but at the same time, 5-year deals, I think signing free agents to 5-year deals is terrifying. That's scary when you're
that's
signing
a better point.
Team.
But
when you're
fair.
extending your in-house talent, 5-year deals are the way to go, because if they continue to play at the pace that you think they are, those 3-year deals, they're going to be worth a lot more in 3 years than they are on their 5-year deal. So, yeah, I don't know. With Leonard Williams, though, I don't even think that he's a guy who gets a 5-year deal on the open market or from the Giants. I think 4 at the max. But
four. With dead money in the 4th year.
Yeah, basically my whole point of what I was trying to get to is that the Giants don't have any long-term deals anyway. They have a ton of cap space next year and the year after that, like looking down the road. As long as the cap space continues to rise as it should, as we all expect it to, especially with this new TV deal that everybody's talking about. The Giants don't have much money tied up into anything down the road, so they might as well, I guess, just bite the bullet, sign Leonard Williams to this huge contract extension. Maybe it's an overpay, whatever, but you need some talent on this roster. You can't keep letting guys walk away, and it seems like this is really the only talented guy that we have to keep around for a long-term deal anyway. So I think I'm leaning towards just saying, screw it, I want the Giants to sign him, but I'm probably going to be a little frustrated when I see the contract details. But overall, I don't think that they can afford to lose him as much as they can't afford to pay him.
Yep, I think that's kind of where I'm settling into. Like, I'm realizing how important he really is to this defense, and that if the Giants let him go, there's no one to replace him with, unless they're going to change their scheme up entirely, transition to a 4-3, retain Dalvin Tomlinson, move Dexter Lawrence interior to the DT position, like 2I, 1 tech, and then just sign defensive ends or transition Lorenzo Carter, Ocean Exhibit back to DE away from OLB. It's too much. It's simply too much. Leonard Williams has all the freaking leverage right now, and the Giants are sitting here like, we're going to have to pay this guy. We're just going to try and keep it as low as possible. The reports are that they haven't made much progress, so I imagine they're asking for a ridiculous amount of money. And the Giants are like, all right, well, let's see what other teams give you in that case, because we know, it's not going to happen. I could see them rescinding the franchise tag and slapping the transition tag on him, seeing what another team is willing to offer him, and then matching it or letting him walk. That's honestly, I could see them totally doing that, because then they don't have to lock him in, to a franchise tag deal. They can hit him with a transition tag instead. So that might be more beneficial for them to see what other teams are willing to offer. But that's pretty much what we got to say. That's our spiel on Leonard Williams and what we think he is worth to this team right now. In terms of, is he worth $22 million, $25 million? This is a tough argument to have, because everybody might have their own perspectives. But guys, let us know in the YouTube section, in the comments, what you think he is worth. If he's worth, 22, 25, 20. Some people might not even want him at all, no matter the price. So let us know what you think. Really interested to see your opinion on this specific matter. But guys, thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants. Watching through this video 22 minutes in. Really appreciate you guys. Much love. And we'll catch you guys on the next video.